Okay, now I would like to take a deep dive into the Viterbi-Viterbi or carrier phase estimation algorithm, and this is the product of a multi-generational collaboration between Andrew Viterbi and his daughter Audrey Viterbi. So we saw that you're looking at blind feed-forward phase recovery for QPSK. When we looked at the taxonomy, this was considered one of the Goldilocks approaches, which is very popular. And among this, the algorithm that is most used is the Viterbi-Viterbi algorithm. So in commercial systems, the CPE comes right here at the end of the digital signal processing chain. And in our teaching laboratory, it also comes right at the end. So this is one of the last steps after you've already done everything you can to improve the quality of your signal previously. So now we're going to focus on what do we do at this one sample per symbol point in the DSP chain in order to recover the phase noise, eliminate the phase noise to recover the signal. So in this, appearing late here as it is here in the DSP chain, I'll just mention that the frequency offset estimation has removed the macro differences between these two lasers, that of the transmitter and that of the receiver. The CMA has recovered timing and it's taken care of distortion. Now the carrier phase estimation must take care of the residual time-varying phase noise, and this again comes from both transmit and receive laser. Previously I've talked about the line width, and you may ask the line width of which of these two lasers, and it's the sum of the line widths of both lasers. So it's the cumulative line width from both the transmit and the received laser. And that's what we're dealing with the CPE. So as we discussed previously, phase experience is a random walk from the laser phase noise. But the signal is also being modulated with data, so it jumps every symbol period. It jumps from one data position to the next data position. So I have this QPSK modulation format, and I might be at this for one data point, and then I'll jump here. And then the next one I might jump here. So I'm making these big jumps with the data every symbol period. And then I have this random walk, so I'm deviating from whatever the nominal one was, and that of course can accumulate with time. So this is the challenge that we're facing when we're trying to do an estimate of what is that random walk. How can I compensate for it? So if we looked at the signal that's entering the CPE, it has this format. And of course in this there's the amplitude of the data signal. The D here stands for data. The theta is the phase of the data signal. And, excuse me, the theta here is the phase noise. And here N of K is the additive white Gaussian noise. So this part, which is the data phase angle, let's take the example of QPSK. And it takes discrete values. There's 4 values that it might take. Pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, minus 3 pi over 4, minus pi over 4. So these are the 4 possibilities for this data signal. The other theta k, as I mentioned, this is the random walk that we'd like to estimate. We'd like to try and get visualization to be able to observe this in a better way. So what we have to do is we have to eliminate the data jumps so that I can observe and estimate the phase noise as it goes through this random walk. So how is it that I eliminate the jumps in the data? So let's consider M-PSK. In this case, the data signal is some integer times pi over m. M is the number of points in the constellation. And what happens if I multiply this phase by m? If I multiply it by m, then what's left is just j times pi. So I have just a multiple of pi. So when I say multiply the phase by m, it's the same as saying I'm going to take the signal and I'm going to raise it to the mth power. Because when I take if I have e to the j pi over m, and I take this and I raise it to the nth power, then I'm multiplying here. And so multiplying the phase by m is the same as taking the signal and raising it to the nth power. So when I do this, all of this data collapses to 1 point. Okay, it becomes one value. It's a multiple of pi, so modulo 2 pi, it's one value. And of course, for QPSK, m equals 4. So let's look at what happens when I take my received signal and I raise it to the 4th power. I'm doing this so I can get rid of this theta d, but there's all these other components. What's happening with those? So let's start with neglecting higher order interactions for right now. What happens is that I get something that looks like a to the 4th. I have this 4 theta d, and then I have 4 times the phase noise, and I get some additive noise that I'll just call, for now, n total, after all this process is taken care of. So remember that when I take e to the j 4 times theta d, I'm just going to get e to the j pi, any j from 1 to 4, or, and that's going to equal -1. So no matter which data points, I'm getting rid of the jumps in the data. I'm just dumping us all in one quadrant at one angle for the data, 1 point. But of course, the additive white Gaussian noise and the phase noise is going to be all still present, even though I'm getting rid of my data. So what I have now is a received signal that looks like something like the 4th power, and if it's QPSK, that's 1 to the 4th power, it's just 1. So I have my phase, a tone with a phase that I'm trying to estimate, that's hidden in some noise process. Let's talk a little bit about that noise process. So when I take something to the 4th power, that's not a linear operation. So if I started out with Gaussian noise, there's no guarantee that I'm going to get Gaussian noise afterwards. There are these signal by noise interaction terms, and there's noise by noise self-interaction terms. But despite this term that I call n total is still well approximated as Gaussian. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, if I'm at reasonably high signal to noise ratio, the interaction terms that I mentioned here, they're pretty negligible compared to the other terms. So they're not contributing much to the statistics. The linear signal by noise term, that's what's dominating, and that was additive white Gaussian noise. So that's why, in general, it tends to look Gaussian. Also, when I use the Viterbi-Viterbi algorithm, we'll see that it uses block averaging. Block averaging means I'm adding up all these different contributions. I'm adding up noises at different sampling times. And because of this, the central limit will kick in, the central limit theorem, that tells me that a summation over many small contributions will tend to a Gaussian distribution. So we can think of what's happening as being something like a zero mean additive white Gaussian noise added to the system. So I said something about block averaging. What does that mean? The Viterbi-Viterbi algorithm assumes that the phase is mostly constant in a certain block. Okay? The whole purpose of this is to find one value for the phase during this block. So that means that we know that what is a random walk? A random walk means there's many small drifts that it can accumulate, and it can accumulate a lot. So Viterbi-Viterbi only works if the phase drift is slower, ideally much slower, than the modulation rate. Not just smaller over a single symbol period. It's got to be smaller over a block of the symbol period, because we're going to be doing averaging in order to try and eliminate that noise, which is hiding from us what is the value of that supposedly constant phase. So I have a sliding window of length n. N is the length of my block. It's an odd number. I'm looking at the middle. So here I'm trying to estimate what is the phase noise, the phase noise at a certain time k, and I'm going to look at data, received signal raised to the 4th power before it and after. And I assume that the phase is pretty constant during this period. I'm going to average over it because, of course, these heights or the phases are being obscured by noise. But the more I average, the more that noise goes away. And then in the end, I'll get some estimate of what the true value is. And that estimate I will apply to the center point. And maybe to save computation, I might do a couple neighbors too, but I could also just do it for one point. Slide my window. Next time I'm going to put that at the center, use the previous ones and follow. Assume that now it's also constant during this time, and make my estimate based on that. So this is the idea of the sliding window of length n, which is used to reduce the noise so that if it's true, I get just the summation of the same complex exponential at a fixed phase offset, and I estimate what that phase offset is. So let's go over it again. How is it that this Viterbi-Viterbi works? It assumes that the phase drift is actually constant during this observation window. The data has been removed. So in this observation window, the only thing I have is a single complex exponential with a fixed phase. We average over a block in order to get the noise down. So to get rid of the additive white Gaussian noise, I use simple averaging, and that'll give me a good estimate of the phase. And what is the estimate of the phase? Well, I just take that sum that I made and I take the angle of that. I use the arctangent of the imaginary and real part of this summation, and that is what I use as my estimate of what the phase offset is. Now remember, I raised to the power 4. So because of that, when I actually want to get back to my original phase noise, this is the phase noise to the 4th power. If I want to get the phase noise that I'm actually going to apply to my signal that wasn't raised to the 4th power, then I'm going to have to divide by 4 there. Now there is some ambiguity of plus minus pi over 2, which is introduced by this process, but what we do is we do an unwrapping of the phase. We actually track it as it goes past 2 pi, etc. And by unwrapping the phase, we can get rid of that ambiguity and know where it should fall. So the last step is I've come up with an estimate, which is a pure rotation, and I take it to, I apply it to the original data, not the 4th power, but to the before I took the 4th power, I applied this estimate of the phase noise, and now I have the recovered signal with the phase noise removed. And then I slide the window and repeat. So this choice of n is like really important because I have these two fundamental concepts in the block approach. One is that the phase is constant. So if so that has to be true for my approach to work. And secondly, I want the noise to not be obscuring everything, that I actually can come up with a decent estimate because I'm averaging over the noise and that's being effective. So imagine the first case where I have a very wide filter window. N is large. This is really good if I have a lot of additive noise. If I have a lot of additive noise, I'm going to average it out a lot and reduce the noise. But it's a very large window, which means that this assumption that the phase is fixed may not be true for that large n. And so it'll fail if the phase variation is too fast. And this will lead to errors. Opposite case, I choose small n. Now I have a very narrow filter window, and it's best for tracking fast changes in phase because it's not too wide, so the assumption of it being constant is more likely to be accurate. But it can't average that much noise, and so if it's a very weak signal to noise ratio, it's not going to be very effective. So the choice of n is informed above all by this line width symbol duration that we saw, delta nu, the line width, times the symbol width, because this will help us choose about whether n is actually constant, whether the phase is actually constant during a window as large as n. So consider the error in the phase estimate. So it's the true phase theta minus whatever estimate I take from my system data hat. And suppose I wanted to look at the, of course, this is a random variable and I run it many times, different blocks, and each block it's going to be a different error. But I look at the variance, like how big is the error here? And I'm going to show you an example for a system with signal to noise ratio of 15 dB, aligned with a 2 megahertz, and a data rate of 10 gigabits per second. So what I've done is I've swept the length of the estimation window from 0 to 25 dB, and the variance can go in this range. But the important thing is that I see a bowl, that I see this transition too short, and I have so much noise I'm getting a bad estimate. I'm getting better estimate as I make it longer, but if I start getting longer and longer, my assumption that the phase is constant is no longer valid. So you have to try and find this sweet spot. It's a little easier looking at the variance, but to know the variance, this is a simulation. I know what the true phase is. Now, in a system, you don't know what the true phase is. You can't see it. This is your best bet at how you can see it. But you could look at the performance of the system. You could put some performance metric, whichever one you want to deal with, and sweep the length of the window and try and find this bowl and try and find out the best for your system, what would be the best length of the Viterbi-Viterbi filter. So, the Viterbi-Viterbi structure, it's a blind feed-forward approach. It's well suited to parallel hardware, great for pipelining. The basic concept is simple: raise the symbol to the nth power. This decouples the data modulation from the main goal, which is tracking the phase. There are two fundamental system parameters which determine how well this approach will work. That is the line width delta nu and the baud rate TS. Of course, narrower line width will reduce tracking errors because this idea of constant in a window, constant phase in a window would be accurate. And of course, higher baud rates also makes this assumption true.